Hello, everybody. We are here today, April 2025. We have the pleasure to have with us Zane Stein. Most of you know him. He is a very famous astrologer from US, but he lives in Australia since a long time ago. He is the NCR International Delegate for Australia. He's going to talk with us about the actor and the audience, especially about the fifth house and the 11th house. He already have that you hold your questions. He will ask you when is the time to ask the questions. Thank you, Zane. Thank you to be with us.
Thank you very much, and Monica, and welcome everyone. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay and see the slideshow. Thank you for being here. Now, today I'm going to talk about the 5th and 11th house and show you how the relationship to each other can be clearly seen when we look at the interplay between the actor and the audience. Anyone who has given a presentation in front of a group knows what it feels like to be an actor on stage. I can tell you from personal experience that just how similar the two roles are. Okay. Yeah, that's me on the right a few weeks ago, playing a part in the local theater group's production of Little Women. I played old Mr. Lawrence, a role I could not have played 20 years ago, but I'm definitely old now. And the photo was taken by a member of the audience. So this picture itself is showing the connection between the actor and the audience. So just what is the actor-audience house relationship astrologically? To understand that, we need to take a step back and look at the larger picture. One of the first things a person learns when they begin studying astrology is that there are 12 houses, and each one presides over a particular areas of life. You've all probably seen something like this, giving a brief glimpse over these areas. I say brief because you could write a whole book on each house, but the keywords help you begin to tune into the essence of a house. You probably next learned the importance of the four angles, the ascendant, descendant, and the MCIC create the outer axis of the chart. The ascendant shows one's view of the immediate world and how the person acts based on this view, versus the descendant, which reveals how one views others with whom one comes into contact. The M
Sounds frozen.
You're used to looking at a map and
Sorry, Tim, we lost you for a few seconds. So we'll go back because your internet froze. Maybe you can repeat the last minute, please.
you want me to go back a slide?
Yes, because we've lost you for a few seconds.
Okay, second here. Yep. Was it during this slide?
Yes, from there,
Hello?
please. Yeah, yes, from there,
Okay.
it's fine. You can go back.
Okay. So you probably next learned the importance of the four houses, the four angles, the ascendant, descendant, and the MCIC. These create the outer axis of the chart. The ascendant shows one's view of the immediate world and how the person acts based on this view, versus the descendant, which reveals how one's view of others is affected, and how that shapes your view of relationships in general. The MC shows one's view of the public and how one seeks to act in that realm. The IC reveals how one interacts with home and family members. Now, learning about the hemispheres was probably confusing to a lot of people when they first started out. I know it was to me because I'm used to looking at a map. On the map, the right side of the map is east and the bottom of the map is south. And here I'm learning that on a horoscope, on a chart, the east is on the left and the south is on the top. It's a little disorienting. I think it's probably because Uranus rules astrology that we had to be disoriented in order to look at the charts. Anyway, planets in the Eastern Hemisphere tend to represent self-assertive, self-motivated energies, actions the person feels he or she is in control of. Planets in the Western Hemisphere tend to represent energies that are other-oriented, actions the person feels are at least partly in the hands of fate. Planets in the Southern Hemisphere tend to represent social, more extroverted energies, a concern for outside events, whether they affect the person or not. Planets in the Northern Hemisphere tend to represent more private, subjective energies, a concern more for the inner world than the outer. When you combine the hemispheres, you can now divide the wheel into quadrants, each with 3 signs. The first quadrant would be houses 1, 2, and 3. I call that personal identity. The second quadrant, personal expression. The third quadrant, social identity. And houses 10, 11, 12 is the fourth quadrant, social expression. But here's something you may not have learned. When you look at the midpoints between the angles, such as the ascendant MC midpoint, you're looking at an additional axis because the midpoint of each quadrant is either square or opposition the midpoints of the other 3 quadrants. So if you can imagine drawing another axis in the chart based on these 4 midpoints. And I tend to call this inner axis, if you will, the chart's backbone. For a moment, I want to direct your attention to 4 houses on this page here. And I'm not going to read all this stuff. You'll get a copy of a link to view the recording, afterwards if you want to go back over this, or you can take a screenshot of it. The houses that I want to call your attention to are what I call the powerhouses. They're the middle house of each quadrant. They can be said to concentrate the energies of the quadrant. A key word for these houses is use or to use. Astrologer Alan Oken wrote that these houses, these would be the 2nd, the 5th, the 8th, and the 11th, are storehouses of the horoscope. They hold our treasures and act as bank accounts or safety deposit boxes where we go to store what we value and withdraw the valuables as needed. The 2nd house concentrates the energies of the ascendant and the IC through their midpoint. It's where our personal identity and what we learned about ourselves from our family combine, giving us a sense of what is most valuable to us, especially in ourselves, our self-worth. The opposite 8th house concentrates the energy of the descendant and the MC through their midpoint. It is where what we learn from one-on-one interactions with others combines with what we learn from going out into the world, giving us a sense of what is most valuable to other people, especially how other people value us. But the 2 houses that we're going to be talking mostly about today are the 5th and the 11th. So let's look at those. The center of the fourth quadrant, which is the center of the 11th house, is where you find the ascendant MC midpoint. And if you are an astrologer who uses midpoints in your work, it's probably one of the ones that you're most familiar with. With this midpoint here in the 11th house is where our personal focus and our worldly focus combine. It is how we choose to interact with people, how we react when others show us how they feel about us. What we experience in this house helps shape our sense of purpose as we see how we fit in or don't fit in with the people around us. The center of the second quadrant, the fifth house, is where you'll find the IC descendant midpoint, which is, of course, exactly opposite the ascendant midheaven one. Here, what we learned about ourselves by interacting with our family combines with our experiences with people in the outside world on a one-to-one basis. We get our first clues from others of what will happen when we express ourselves, which then shapes just how much or how little we allow ourselves to feel the pure joy of doing what we love. It's where we decide just how much of that little child within us will allow to come out and play. Now, I call these houses the axis of connection. On one level, we understand the opposition very early in life, long before we ever even heard of astrology, especially if there are siblings. It's me and mine versus you and yours. And it can be a happy interplay or an out and out battle. From an evolutionary astrology perspective, Jeffrey Wolf Green writes that where there is an opposition, the soul is equally divided between the opposing forces of wanting to be completely free and independent and the need to actualize or fulfill itself through relationships of all kinds. The opposition often produces a potential confrontation. He also writes that in the opposition, the individual tends to find themselves fluctuating between the two extremes of complete social immersion and complete social withdrawal. In other words, with the opposing houses, if somebody is focusing on one house, it won't be long before they switch and focus on the other one. Now, the idea that everything contains within it the essence of its opposite is an ancient concept. In its simplest form, you can see it in the symbol of the Tao, often called a yin-yang symbol in Western writings. When Carl Jung explored the nature of opposites, he introduced a concept with a really fancy name. And I'm not going to try to say that myself. In simple terms, this is the idea that everything eventually moves towards its opposite, highlighting the dynamic nature of existence and the constant interplay of opposing forces. In fact, you could say there's a unity of opposites since they're interconnected and interdependent, with each one defining by its relationship to the other. For example, take day or night, one does not exist without the other. And understanding the relationship is necessary to understand the concept of time. Or if you remember your high school science classes, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Now, perhaps the astrologer who had the greatest impact on my understanding of the star science was Dane Rudhyar. You may know that Dane Rudhyar was an avid student of the works of Carl Jung, so they greatly influenced his writing. I remember many years ago reading a book of his entitled An Astrological Triptych. In it, he wrote, "Everything is known through its opposite. The full is known through the emptiness which it fills. Indeed, everything is realized through its opposite." In Astrological Houses and Zodiac Signs, he wrote, the houses are psychological factors. Then, by extension, they refer to the types of circumstances which these psychological categories of experiences are normally met by the individual. The signs, he said, are energy factors, sort of like an electromagnetic field surrounding the Earth, but it's the circle of houses that is the framework where this energy is expressed, where events take place. One way that he said you could clearly see how the houses are interconnected is look at somebody who has intercepted houses in their chart. If you use a Placidus or Coke or one of the other houses other than equal house or whole sign, you're likely to see some charts, especially far north or south, with intercepted houses. If the house is intercepted in one sign, on one side of the chart, the opposite one is always exactly the same, intercepted. And he uses as example the chart of astrologer Evangeline Adams, who had Sagittarius intercepted in her sixth house and Gemini in the 12th. And he wrote that you can see Gemini in the 12th, Mrs. Adams' psychic and social gift, which she tapped in order to be able to explain charts to clients, which she would not have been able to do if it hadn't been for the Sagittarius in the sixth, giving her one of the tools, the ability to step back and see the larger picture. Let's read a couple of quotes here. This first one is from a book called A Study of Hermetic Philosophy of Ancient Egypt and Greece. Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled. And this one by Hermann Hesse. Hermann Hesse is one of my favorite authors, great impact on my youth. Our mind is capable of passing between the dividing line we have drawn for it. Beyond the pairs of opposites of which the world exists, other new insights begin. So he's basically laying it on the table here that any apparent differences, separations between opposites is a line that we invented. It's not a real one. It's only an apparent one. If you remove that line, if you step beyond it and look at the two opposites, in this case, the two houses, as one unit, you see a much larger picture and you get a whole new insights. So the key to understand any house is the wisdom to see that it is forever connected with its opposing house. I think it's a kind of foolishness or blindness to see one house on its own. And all the pairs of opposites have at the root the archetypal connection of the first through the seventh. So one house to the other always represents the self versus the other, personal versus relationships. No matter what type of relationship you are in, or even if you're not in one at all, unless you're living on a desert island with no other people, you'll experience self versus other. As John Donne put it, no man is an island entire unto itself. Now, I remember reading a piece by an author by the name of Tracy McMillan, who was talking about relationships, and this one always stuck with me. I think of masculine and feminine energies like two sides of a battery. There's a plus side and a minus side, and in order to make something turn on, you need to have some connection to both ends of the battery. The opposites have to be touching in some way. It's the same in relationships. So in my opinion, this book, which is probably the best book on houses, it's written by Roger, as you can see. One of the factors that pervades each house interpretation in this book is the fact that each house derives its energies and experiences from the previous house. So this helps us understand its meaning. The fourth house, where what the person drew from his family relations has assimilated, stabilized, integrated, or built, produces potential energy. And this potential energy is tapped in the fifth. Creativity is referred to the fifth house, he wrote, because to create in a human sense is to impress upon one's community some characteristics of own personality. It's to make our own mark. Every house in its birth chart refers to some great test. In the fifth house, the great test involves the ability to act out one's innermost nature in terms of purity of motive and in using in a pure manner the means available for the release of one's energies. Energy flows out from the actor. Now, by actor, Rudyard meant the person who is acting. But in our particular case, I think you could also refer to the actual actor on stage with this comment. Now, because Rudyard knew about the connection between the fifth and the 11th house and how important it was, he started off the chapter on the 11th house going back and talking about the fifth house. He wrote, the energies and faculties concentrated in the fourth house find their expression through the mechanisms developed in the fifth house. Creative activities, emotional outpourings of the self, risk-taking, all kinds of daring, dramatic gestures in which the individual functions in solitary splendor or as a master of men and conditions. Just as the fifth house refers to the release of powers which were tapped in the fourth house, he wrote, so the 11th house deals with the form which powers manifesting in the 10th house phase may take as they are released. In the 11th house, the power of society, of the collectivity or the group, is released through the individual. More exactly, this power is released through the activities the individual performs within the social sphere in which he belongs. The experience he has gained in the 10th house makes it possible for him to set new social objectives or new professional goals for himself, or to relax in the company of his fellow workers and friends. In the fifth house, Rudyard said, root forces are active. In the 11th house, the new seed is being formed. And this new seed in the human kingdom is more than a mere duplicate of the seed of yesteryear. It is a new seed because man has the power to add constantly to his vision and his creation. All yesteryears can be combined by creative man into a new tomorrow. Now, astrologers have often identified all creative processes with the fifth house, but in the fifth house, Roger said, it is the individual who creates strictly as an individual or as head of a house, and his creation is especially based on biological factors. In the 11th house is the whole that creates through the individual. I think that's an important distinction. Traditional astrology, Roger wrote, speaks feebly of the 11th house of hopes and wishes. And I'm going to stress this next sentence from Roger's. How weak a conception for one of the most vibrant of all houses. It is a house of communion with others, but in this communion there is power. It gathers its power around itself. It brings us to a focus within its walls, the universal and creative power of life. The fifth and the 11th houses are both succeeding houses. And the keynote, as I mentioned earlier, is the word to use. Success in these houses is the ability to make use of their power. Another thing about these houses is that if you fail at something, you have the ability through these houses to make use and learn from your failure and add that to your stock of knowledge for the future. So this is just a brief list of some of the things that are assigned to the houses. And I tried to compare 5th and 11th houses side by side so you can see, for example, on the top, second one from the top, confidence, self-reliance, 11th house, trust and reliance on others, basically, or actor and drama on the left for the 5th house, audience and witnesses on the right for the 11th house. Let's consider perhaps one of the most popular themes of the 5th house, a crush, or that first blush of love. You're in full joy, which you want to share with the object of your feelings. If you're like most people, you take on the role of the best you in hopes that the other person will love what they see. You dress and act like the person you think they would love to be with. Well, hopefully you're not putting on a fake persona. It is clear you're playing a part. You are an actor. Like Shakespeare said in As You Like It, all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. And in early stages of relationships, this is what you have. You're an actor or an actress. You may have read that this is the house where you find your joy. Sending out the message to others, this is the me who loves you, carries a subtext of joy with the hope that the other will respond in a way to amplify your joy. Now, since the 11th house is the 5th from the 7th, that means it's another person's 5th house. At least as far as you are concerned, it is where you see the object of your desires putting on their best self. It is where you pick up the signals that the other person has a crush on you. And perhaps most important, it is the response you perceive from others to your message. If you send them the message, this is the me who loves you, and they're not interested in reciprocating at all, that comes to you through your 11th house. Likewise, if they received your message with joy and want to let you know that they are happy, that your message made them happy and they want to return the joy, this will also come to you through the 11th house. So you could say in one respect that the 5th house is love given, and the 11th house is love received. Akin to this is the fact that the 5th house is where you find lovers, and the 11th house is where you find friends. Now, I don't know how many times over the years someone in a long-term relationship has told me that the reason they stayed together so long is that while they started off as lovers, they then became friends. My mother used to tell me that my father was her best friend, but it didn't start off that way. She tells a story that she had a best friend in high school, and when her best friend introduced her to her friend's brother, it was love at first sight, and she knew at that point that she was going to marry him. I don't know how she did that, but the early relationship was like most early relationships, passion and putting on the best face. It wasn't until they married and settled down into a routine that they discovered they were best friends. There's another aspect of this. Some people take into account how the person acts in the 11th house situations before they decide to take on a relationship with them. There's a song by the Spice Girls, which basically sums this up. I don't know if this will come through. So the idea is, if you and I are going to be in a love relationship together, you're going to have to like my friends. If you don't like my friends, then you're not going to like me. If you can't accept my friends, then you're not accepting me. And you can see this is a connection between the two houses. In a love affair can be brief or long lasting or blossom into a committed relationship. Friendships can sometimes last a lifetime. If in the 5th house, you may meet someone while sharing common interests, hobbies, which develop into a deep friendship rooted in those common interests. The 5th 11th dynamic is very much a factor in the theater and on more than one level. The director can be found in the 5th house and the actors he directs in the 11th. Almost everything a director does is about the actors. The director chooses the actors they cast, knowing that choosing the wrong actor for the role could be disastrous. He or she helps the actors prepare for the roles by helping them learn their lines and by blocking. If you're not familiar with the term, that's working out where the actors stand during their time on stage and how they move. It's called blocking. In order for the play to work, the director must have a rapport with the actors and help them feel comfortable with each other. He or she sometimes has to even help them balance out the roles of their competitive egos so they can work together. The director then begins to run through a play with the actors, which helps them get the flow of the play. But also the director sees where any issues might need to be addressed. It is the process that turns a series of separate scenes into a complete story. When a director works towards getting his cast together, he's not looking to control his actors. He's looking to find actors that he can partner with to help him in the creative journey of exploring and developing the play. And so here you can see again the archetypal first 7th house, the director being the 1st house, and the 7th house, the actors. Now, I like these 2 quotes. I'll just read them. When I meet a good actor, I would like to be a director. When I meet a good director, I would like to be an actor. When there's a good script, I would like to be both a director and an actor. The switch is very natural, not intentional. So you can see that the actors themselves and the directors, they can sometimes put themselves in the shoes of the other side of the dynamic. And this probably says a lot what a lot of actors think. When you get a good director, when you get to work with a good director, an actor's job gets reduced in half. The actor can express themselves freely and easily when they work in partnership with the director. They don't have to work hard at it. It's a pleasure to act, not a chore. Okay, so now at this point, I'd like to stop for a couple minutes, see if anybody has any questions. And what I'd like you to do is unmute yourself if you have a question. You can turn your camera on, and I'll be happy to answer questions if I can. Anybody have any questions? I don't see anybody. Maybe they're not. I'll just look at the chat room for a second.
It was some confusion when you were talking about your first, I don't know, table of data. I don't know, you want to go back to that, or it's already clear for the people who are asking?
Okay, so let's see here. Okay, I'll go back. Let me know which slide we're talking about because I'm not sure which one they're.
Almost in the beginning, that's what people were asking. The one that you were talking about, the midpoint between the houses, like the angle houses. This one.
It didn't seem like you were reading off of this one. I was wondering if there was another one.
No, I wasn't going to read the actual text off of these because there's a lot here. I was just referring to the basically it. I'm sorry if it was not clear. These are, if you look at the right side, right columns, these are the four midpoints. The top one is the first ascendant IC midpoint, and there's some keywords for that midpoint, and that would be in the middle of the second house. The IC descendant midpoint is some keywords for that midpoint, and that would be focused on the fifth house.
Right.
Yeah, so that's what I was referring to, but I wasn't reading the text from
Okay.
here.
That makes it so much clearer. Thank you so much. This is a great presentation.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear there. I was telling Monica before we started that last night I had to drive 3 hours, no, 2 hours to get to a doctor's appointment, and then after it was over, 2 hours to come back. And I got home driving in the dark through an area where there might be kangaroos jumping out at any minute, so I had to be always on my toes. So it was kind of exhausting. So I woke up this morning and I was a little fuzzy when I first got up. All right.
Well, you are doing great, Zane. Thank you.
All right. Okay.
Zane,
Let's go.
may I ask a question?
Of course.
Would you address some of the soul evolutionary polarities involving the fifth and the 11th? For example, when the lunar nodes land in the fifth and the 11th, or perhaps even Pluto landing in the fifth or the 11th in a natal chart, looking at the polarity point.
All right. Now, I must tell you that while I've done a good deal of reading of evolutionary astrologer, I am not one. All right. I believe there's a lot to evolutionary astrology, but I'm not the person to ask about the evolutionary astrology. I just refer to.
How about even just from a psychological standpoint?
So are you asking when like a major transit goes through the fifth and the 11th house?
No, I'm referring if somebody has their nodes landing in the lunar nodes that land in the fifth and the 11th.
You mean
Obviously,
natally or
natally.
ah, okay. Um, sure. So we'll look at the two. If it's the north node in the fifth and the south node on the 11th, then I like to think of the nodes in a way as a tree, with the north node being the top of the tree, with the leaves receiving the sun, and the south node the roots that go in the ground. The south node is where you draw upon all the experiences and the knowledge that you have built up either in this lifetime, or if you're a reincarnation enthusiast, that you bring with you from other lives. It's a place, it's a storehouse of your past experiences, and you could draw them up in the same way that tree draws its nutrients from underground up into the top, which is the north node, which is where you grow. And just like the tree uses the nutrients from underground and has photosynthesis in the leaves based on the sun coming down, and changing the nutrients into food, into sugars that the tree can use. The north node is where we go to grow, to learn new experiences, and to develop. And so if the north node isn't in the fifth, the focus is on expressing yourself. It's a focus on developing more and more ways to bring out your creative ability, to just share your genius with other people, or either directly or working through children. But it's where the focus is for your growth. The 11th house shows that you've had a lot of experience that you could draw upon from other people, like from clubs you belong to, from associations, from society. It's where you have the food that you use for your creativity. So you might, if you're an author and you have the north node in the fifth house, you might write stories that are based on all of the experiences you have had in various society and group settings. If it's the north node in the 11th house and the south node in the fifth house, then the north node shows that where you grow is in a group setting, in society, making your contribution to the group, being a part of the group that is a useful part, that stirs the other people in the group, perhaps interacting with you. It helped to the group to grow and blossom and accomplish things, perhaps change the world in some way. You're drawing on the fifth house. You're drawing on your instincts, your creative self, the things that you have personally experienced, in your personal life. That's the fuel. That's the food for your working with others. So you draw upon your childhood, for example. You draw upon your experiences that you learned when you were first trying new things, experimenting as a child. All of this is fuel for the and if you have relationship with other children, that's also fuel for your 11th house. So you may help with the north node in the 11th house. You may help devise, for example, a thing to help society's children in some way. Maybe you lead an organization to help poor children, like Save the Children Foundation, and you draw upon your own childhood experiences in order to do that. Does that kind of answer your question?
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Any other questions? All right, let me get to the where.
I have a
Thank you,
question.
Shannon.
Yes, go ahead.
Would you give that house then gets more energy and more action in the chart when there's planets there?
Okay, this is a good question, but it's one that applies no matter which houses you're talking about. If there are planets in a house, those are, shall we say, parts of yourself that are focused in that house. But it doesn't make that house per se get more attention. It means that these are parts of yourself that are focused in there, so that if I have nothing in my chart in the 11th house, nothing, but my 11th house is Capricorn, and Saturn is the ruling planet of my 11th house because of Capricorn. And I have hard aspects to Saturn. It's square my Sun, it's square my Mars, it's square my midheaven IC, and it's semi-square my Venus. So so that makes that 11th house very, very important in my life, because the planet that rules it is involved in a lot of aspects in my chart. So even though there's nothing in there, it's an important house to me. So I don't think having one or two planets in a house means that house becomes more important. Now, I do think that if you have a stellium, you have like a bunch of planets in a house, then a lot of your attention is focused in that house. And so it becomes more important in your day-to-day life. You tend to focus your attention there a lot. So in that respect, having a lot of planets in a house gives that a little added importance.
Thank you.
That answer? You're welcome. All right. All right. So I'm going to continue now. Now, some individuals seem equally at home in acting in a story or directing one. I find that most individuals who are like this, both the 5th and the 11th houses are active in their chart. And using the example that I just said, when I say active, I don't mean necessarily have to have planets in both, but if they don't, then the rulers of those houses are significant in their chart. Tom Hanks is one of the most popular and recognizable actors. You'd find it difficult to meet anyone who hasn't at least seen some of his films. But he is also a well-respected director, and here too, just about everyone has seen at least some of the films he's directed. Tom has Chiron in the 5th, in very close opposition to his moon in the 11th, and the moon is extra important as it also rules the 11th. So Uranus also resides in the 11th house. Chiron and the 5th people have a deeply wounded inner child, often because one or both parents have low self-esteem, which filters down to give them the feeling that they themselves aren't worth much. Tom told an interviewer that his parents were so racked with self-loathing and guilt. The inner child is initially crippled, wanting to express itself, but being unable to do so uninhibitedly. Opposition the moon, this wound expressed itself with great difficulty expressing his feelings around other people, at times finding easier to project those feelings on others. But an opposition is a dynamic aspect, and so there are times when the need to express the feelings sort of bursts out, often in not so socially acceptable ways. So in school, he was unpopular with students and teachers alike. He told Rolling Stone magazine in an interview, I was a geek, a spaz. I was horribly, painfully, terribly shy. But at the same time, I was the guy who'd yell out funny captions during film strips. So you can kind of feel for the guy. He spent most of his time when not in school on his own, but not happy about it. Everything has something that chews them up, he told an interviewer. And for me, the thing was always loneliness. And it was then that he really discovered movies. As a young man going to see a film by myself, he said, I didn't feel like I was alone. There was something that was unfolding up there that brought me into it. And I recognized that for those 2 hours, it made me feel like I belonged to something really good. The cinema has the power to make you not feel lonely even when you are. So you can see the Fifth House, him in the looking at the screen. So he's in the audience looking at the actor. There's a direct connection there, and he basically got into the movie, so there was no separation between the two. He became one with the movie for the hour and a half, 2 hours. After high school, he decided to go to school to study theater. During those years, he met the head of the Great Lakes Theater Festival in Cleveland, Ohio, who suggested that Hanks would profit from becoming an intern at the festival. His internship stretched into a 3-year experience, and he learned a lot. It was a life-changing decision. By the way, in that picture, you can see that's a 20-year-old Tom on the left helping to set up a stage for a play. After several months as an intern, Tom was given a part in Taming of the Shrew at the Great Lakes Shakespeare Festival. He made his professional stage debut portraying the role of Grumio on November 1st, 1977. And I got a laugh when I saw that because that date that he made his personal appearance for the first time in public was also the date that Chiron was discovered. And he has Chiron in his fifth house. So I'm not saying he had anything to do with the discovery, but it's definitely a kind of a synchronicity there. Now, if you're not familiar with the play, Grumio is the servant to the male lead, known for his tendency to interpret his master's speech and commands in a literal and ridiculous way. So his first role was in comedy, and he excelled. The outer wheel for this is opening night. The Sun-Uranus conjunction is in his second house, which is the house of self-worth, and it squared his natal Chiron moon opposition. I suspect it was Uranus earlier reaching the exact square to his Chiron that brought the director to give him the part. Mars is transiting his 11th house Uranus, squared by transiting Chiron in the 8th house of transformation. So you can imagine here, with all these aspects interconnecting with his chart, that this must have given him the fire, because from his first stage appearance, he knew that this is what he wanted to do for the rest of his life. Of course, there are other aspects in the transit, but we don't have time to go over all the transits, so we'll just focus on those related to the 5th and the 11th house. From there, it was only a couple of years before he was in his first TV show, and he excelled at each role he took. In many of these roles, at least part of the theme was rooted in loneliness. Tom said, I also think of the great stories in literature. They all deal with loneliness. Sometimes it's by way of heartbreak. Sometimes it's by way of injustice. Sometimes it's by way of fate. There's an infinite number of ways to examine it. One of the things Tom really loved was the Beatles, not just the music, but the story of how they came to be. And it was his love of the Beatles and their story that led him to move from acting to directing. Now, you may have heard or seen the movie Castaway. While he was working in this movie, where the castaway has to be on a desert island, Tom started contemplating, what would I bring with me on if I were have to be stranded on a desert island? What music would I like to have with me? And he realized that one of his most important tracks that he would definitely like to have with him is called "There's a Place" by the Beatles. That's a excerpt from the song there's a place where I can go when I feel low, when I feel blue, and that's in my mind, and there's no time when I'm alone. He started thinking about when the group truly became a powerful force, when the Beatles became a force to be reckoned with. It was when they changed the drummer, when they brought Ringo on. This really brought out the connectivity in the group. Ringo, he knew, was truly involved in every single song, whether he sang on it or not. Ringo was the binding force that got the group together. So then he became a man with a mission. He decided he had a story he had to tell. He began writing a script about a fledgling musical group, which he called the Wonders, and the transformative impact on the group when a talented drummer came on board. I couldn't find the date when he began writing the film, but I did find the time for the film's release, which is shortly after Neptune entered his fifth house. Trine his Saturn, ruler of that house, while the moon squared that Saturn. Transiting Chiron was connected to his moon Chiron opposition by sextiling the former and trining the latter. I think the opening night of the film, highlighting these aspects of his chart, shows his connection with the film. Of course, he's gone on to direct numerous other films since then. One time, a reporter at the premiere of one of his films asked him how he felt now that the film was released. He replied, "That's what's nice about directing a film and having it done. There's nothing more I can do about it. It's done. That's it. All I can do is let it go and hope that the people are kind to it." And the people, of course, are the audience. This is Eva Longoria. She's another member of the acting profession who later became a director. But she had no interest in acting as a child. She was more interested in sports and other physical activities. She told interviewers that she was an ugly duckling when she was a child. "I blossomed very late," she explained. "I was like the ugly, skinny, dark one. La Pieta Fe is what my family called me, which is ugly, dark one. I was always kind of funny. I was like, okay, I'm not going to be pretty. I'm going to be the funny one." She has Pluto in the 11th, an indication of just how powerful an interest she would have in the community and in people in general, as well as how intensely she would feel any comments from her audience or her friends or any groups. She would feel them deep to her core. It's not that easy to unpack her fifth house because there's so much in it. She's got a stellium consisting of Ceres, Pallas, Moon, Chiron, and Venus. People with, and this kind of relates to the question that was asked earlier, people with such a heavy presence in the fifth house usually find themselves interested in doing many different things, often totally unrelated to each other. Chiron in the fifth, for many people, shows that they either had to help care for a problem child growing up, or their own inner child was wounded by early environment and they're drawn to helping children with problems when they grow up. One of Eva's sisters has special needs. She told an interviewer, "There was never any resentment because I saw how hard my mother worked and all she did for my sister with special needs. And I wanted to do whatever I could help." So she grew up with a child in the family, her sister, who had special needs. And she spent time helping her mother take care of her sister. This had an impact on how she developed, how that child developed within her. So that's why she said, who I am at the core and what I think represents me is really reflected in my family. Whoops. Okay. So she grew up in a farm. And when she was old enough to work, she took a job in a fast food restaurant. I think it was McDonald's, but I'm not sure. Saving her money so she could afford to go to college. In college, she majored in kinesiology, which is the study of human movement and physical activity. She might have become a medical professional if it hadn't been for a certain chain of events. Now, by the time she started college, Eva had blossomed into a lovely young woman, and she got a lot of attention for her beauty. Imagine now, the child who thought of herself as an ugly duckling now getting a lot of attention because of her looks. And at the urging of a college friend, she entered the Miss Corpus Christi beauty pageant, not expecting to win. If you always thought of yourself as ugly, you wouldn't have the high hopes of expecting yourself to win number one. But she did hope that maybe she would place high enough that she would get a little bit of money to help with her college expenses. What happened surprised her completely because she won the title. Mars was transiting her 11th house, opposed transiting Saturn in her 5th, aspecting her natal moon, Chiron, Venus. Chiron, just about to leave her 11th, was trining her Mercury, ruler of her 5th. Pluto was on her north node, and the event took place just before a new moon opposition her Mars. Events involving Chiron often manifest as a door opening to a world one had never noticed before. The child within, who felt like an ugly duckling, suddenly was the center of attention, and she found that she loved it. She next entered the Texas pageant, and when she heard about a talent contest, she flew to Los Angeles to take part in it. And that is when her life changed forever. A Hollywood talent scout saw her and was so taken with her, he told her he thought she had the makings of a star. He talked her into signing with her, with the Scouts agency, and moving to California. She then did what most actors do when they start out in Hollywood. She got a regular job while she waited for her break. She began working for a headhunter firm, helping other people find jobs based on their skill sets. I have an uncle who passed away, but he was a lifetime actor. He acted for 40 years, and he would often be in his early years in plays on Broadway, and he got a job as a taxi driver when he wasn't on stage for living money. And he used to tell his story that his first play he was in was called A Streetcar Named Desire, and which later became a movie. And so he picks up some passengers and says, "Where are you going?" And they said, "We're going to such and such theater to see A Streetcar Named Desire." And so he knew he was in it. He said, "Oh, that's a great show. You're going to love it. Pay special attention to the upstairs neighbor. He's a really great actor." He was talking about himself. She finally landed a small role in an episode of Beverly Hills 90210. To give you an idea of how small, in the credits, she's listed as flight attendant number 3. But it was a beginning. There was a transiting Moon-Mars conjunction around 19 Aries, conjunct her Moon-Chiron conjunction. Pluto was conjunct Neptune, her Neptune ruler of 5th, and Neptune was conjunct her Mars. This led to several other guest roles in television, and then she landed a part on a daytime soap opera called The Young and the Restless, which she had for 3 years, but it was not a lead role. It was a regular part, but she was on her way. But it was her role as Gabrielle in Desperate Housewives that made her a star. She played the part for 8 years and won several awards for her performances. The premiere of Desperate Housewives was watched by over 21 million viewers. That's a lot for our new show. And the TV audiences loved her. The studios received a ton of fan mail specifically for her, and she developed quite a following. It is not surprising that the audience loved her. The chart for the premiere episode had 5 bodies in her 11th house, including Mercury and Sun conjunct her natal Pluto, square her natal Saturn. Mercury was almost exactly opposite of her 5th house series, and one of the modern day rulerships given to the body series is housewife. There's even a Desperate Housewives fan club, and a lot of the mail to the fan club was from her fans. I think the group still has a Facebook page. They had an online reunion in 2020, 8 years after the show left the air, to raise money for the Actors Fund. And you wouldn't believe how many fans attended. There was a story just about the reunion. Desperate Housewives is getting a reunion, and our inner Lynette is screaming. And these 2 quotes from Twitter. Desperate Housewives stars in the house reunion. I'm going to cry. I'm so excited. Remember, this is 20 years after the show went off the air. And guys, there's going to have a Desperate Housewives live reunion. Oh my God. Now I'll tell you a story about what led Eva to become a director. Eva grew up in a Hispanic community. And as she tells it, one of the snack foods everyone had was spicy, flaming hot Cheetos. After she moved to Los Angeles, at one point, someone gave her a pack of Cheetos, and as she bitten one, she thought, "What's wrong with this? It has no flavor." It was then that she learned that the spicy Cheetos were not the only ones, or even the main variety. She looked into it and discovered that the spicy Cheetos, which was probably found in almost everybody's home in the Hispanic area she lived in, it was a staple, was discovered. It was created by a janitor who worked at the Frito-Lay company. He came up with the idea, took his proposal to the CEO. The CEO tasted the flavors, liked the idea so much that they started manufacturing this chili-infused snack, and the once upon a time janitor became an important employee of the Frito-Lay company. She was so into his story that she wanted to make it into a movie. Eva said, "I immediately knew that I was the only person who could tell the story. I really felt in my bones. I was like, this I know, this I can add value. This world I can build on because I'm from it. And what they say to all writers starting out, write about what you know. And so that's what she's referring to. So she wrote a script, started a production company, hired the cast, and directed the film herself. When the movie premiered, transiting Chiron in her fifth house was conjunct her moon and applying to her natal Chiron. In other words, a Chiron return. She has natal Ceres in the fifth, but there's transiting Ceres was in the 11th. I mention this because another aspect of Ceres is she was the goddess of grain, and Cheetos is cheese flavored, but it's made out of wheat, if I remember correctly. So it's made from the grain. Transiting Sun was almost exactly sextile her fifth house moon. Transiting Mercury was in close square to her natal Mercury, ruler of 11th. She was also having Mars opposing her natal Mars. So you can see in all of these events that happened to Tom, that happened to her, the 5th and the 11th are active each time. One more thing before we leave Eva. As you can see by this top quote, acting is a career that provides her the means to do what she really wants to do. She said, I've always been business minded. I worked in corporate America before becoming an actress, and I knew that acting wasn't the end, but a means to an end. It gave me the platform and the exposure I needed to do my philanthropic work. It also gave me the financial security to focus on my other businesses, start new businesses, and even help other people start businesses. So unlike Tom, who had the acting bug very, very early, Eva came into acting already with the desire to want to make money and to be able to help other people. And so acting was a means to an end. If you remember a fifth house Chiron about the children, in 2006, she founded Eva's Heroes, a charity which helps young adults with developmental difficulties. And this is from their website. Eva's Heroes is dedicated to enriching the lives of individuals with intellectual special needs, age 14 and older. I am blessed with a sister who has special needs. Now I want to impact the lives of similar adults, young adults nationwide. I read this quote years ago from George Bernard Shaw, and it kind of stuck with me. The function of the actor is to make the audience imagine for a moment that real things are happening to real people. That's why when you read descriptions of Neptune, they put movies in there because and plays because you kind of escape from the real world into the movie. Those aren't real people, but you pretend they are, so you can get into it. So Tom Hanks started off in the fifth house acting up, then as an actor looking to the 11th house audience for feedback and applause, and then took on the fifth house role of director, wanting to bring together the member of the cast in the 11th house into a group working together for a common purpose. I'll look at a few more actors, but first I'd like to put two quotes up here of another actor and see if anybody could possibly guess who said them. The first was, I wouldn't trade my career with anybody's. I'd trade a few movies with Tom Hanks, Apollo 13 and Forrest Gump. But other than that, I love my career. And the other one, I think my friend Tom Hanks knows me. He understands me very well. He's always has a sort of parental feeling towards me. He knows I'm a big mushball, which is just part of my personality. So anyone have any idea who may have said those two? kind of surprised me too. It's a good segue here. That's John Travolta. Those are quotes from John Travolta. And he and Tom Hanks are really good friends. So the first time I remember seeing John Travolta was as Vinnie Barbarino on the TV show Welcome Back, Kotter. That was September 1985. The show hooked me immediately, and I don't think I ever missed an episode over the next 4 years. But that wasn't his first acting role. More about that in a bit. John was born with Mars and Sag in the 5th house. Definitely a strong drive to express himself. So full of energy that he is happiest when he is active. The more active he is, the more joy he feels. His enthusiasm is unbridled, and he is by nature competitive. A male with this position, especially when younger, might tend to use his machiness to impress others. It is closely square his Venus in Pisces, which means that whatever he is into, he gets into passionately. It also tends to build a lot of tension and frustration in relationships. So he needs to find a creative outlet to diffuse that tension. The ruler of his 5th house, Jupiter in Gemini, falls in his 11th house, in close square to the ruler of that house, Mercury in Pisces. With the ruler of the 5th in the 11th house, he is hypersensitive to the comments of others, takes them very seriously, and seeks to understand how he can best cultivate positive applause. When he expresses himself to others, he feels very connected with them. You can see that in this quote I have on the screen. I've always thought of a relationship with an actor to audience as a marriage, and a story, and there are ups and downs, and you work through them and you work with them. So he's talking about the 5th, 11th house, the actor and the audience and their relationship as a kind of a marriage. Like his Venus square Mars, Mercury square Jupiter creates a lot of dynamic tension as they too rule opposite zodiac signs. He has a brilliant mind, but at least when he was younger, tended to disorderly thinking. One lesson experience taught him over time is that of self-discipline. John could be said to have been born into show business. His mother was an actress and singer who loved theater and drama. She inspired him and his 5 siblings to all become actors. Not surprising then, the 3rd house of siblings has Leo on the cusp. He was totally bored in high school. His mind just wasn't into it, always elsewhere. And he was interested in performing, so interested that he dropped out of high school at age 17 to follow his dream of acting and moved to New York. His first acting gig was in an off-Broadway production of Rain in 1972. There was a Saturn-Neptune opposition applying that night, and for the duration of the play, with Neptune conjunct Saturn opposing his Mars square his Venus. If you're not familiar with Rain, its theme is all about those Venus, Mars, Saturn, Neptune. It takes place on an island, and the story centers around a female prostitute and a self-righteous missionary who is determined to save her soul. However, he secretly lusts for her, and he eventually rapes her. And if that wasn't enough sexual tension, Mars was squaring his Sun Pallas opposition at the time. From there, John went into movies and television, like the show I mentioned. There were a number of memorable roles, but his breakout role, his first leading role, sparked a cultural phenomenon and made him a household name. And the movie was a massive success for many reasons, but perhaps the primary was his performance as Tony Manero. Critics said he was raw and authentic, able to capture the character's insecurities and frustrations. Transiting Venus conjunct Neptune in his 5th house, opposed as Jupiter, squared as Mercury. Transiting Moon entered the dynamic by being right on his 11th house ruler Mercury. And when filming began in mid-February that year, Neptune was exactly to the minute square his Mercury. A few other aspects included Mars and Leo square his Saturn, and Saturn opposition his Sun, conjunct his Pallas. He's been in a great many movies over the years, and in most of them he has excelled because there was always a strong Mars tension in the plot, whether it was sex, violence, war, anger, or revenge. In The Boy with the Bubble, he played a character who had to be kept protected from Mars-ruled infections because he had no immune system. But John found a way to master his Mars-Venus square and play a part totally out of character for him. If you've seen the movie Hairspray with him, he took his masculine macho Mars in the outdoor wide open spaces loving Sagittarius and pulled off an amazing Edna Turnblad, the agoraphobic mother of the lead actress. And you can see this quote, I actually do like playing offbeat people. I think it's fun, more fun. And with the ruler of his 5th and his 11th, he is always keenly aware of his audience and how they react. The good and wonderful thing about my whole career is that I've always felt that the audience, if I do well, will track wherever I go. Whether it's president or a lawyer or a bad guy or good, all I have to do is execute the material enough where they buy into it. I've had the great luxury of the audiences accepting that. So here's the actor talking about the audience, the 5th and the 11th house. He hasn't taken up the director's chair like his friend Tom Hanks. Will he, with that freedom-loving Mars of his? A reporter once asked him, and this was his reply. I will direct one day, but I have a feeling that it will be very limited. He won't have the enthusiasm for directing. His chart's not oriented that way. I'd like to take a quick look at 2 other actors. When I was growing up, I watched a lot of old movies on television, and this next gentleman was one of my favorites. Jack Lemmon was born with Saturn and Scorpio in the 5th, square his moon, and more closely, square his lunar nodes, what evolutionary astrologers call at the bendings. He doesn't have planets in both houses, but there's a strong connection between them. For the traditional rule of Scorpio, on the 5th cusp, Mars, it's 2 minutes away from the ruler Venus, which rules the 11th house. And we also need to include Mercury, which is close conjunction to his Venus, and Ceres, close to his Mars in the equation. Like any woman with strong Venus-Mars hard aspect, you'd expect passion to be a significant character trait. Jack certainly thought it important. He told the reporter, if you really want to be an actor who can satisfy himself and his audience, you need to be vulnerable. You must reach the emotional and intellectual level of ability where you can go out stark naked emotionally in front of an audience. If Scorpio is on the cusp of the 5th, you can bet the person knew early on what they loved doing and never wavered in his desire. During his acceptance speech of the Lifetime Achievement Award, he stated he knew he wanted to be an actor from the age of 8. He began in acting school productions. Another aspect of this Scorpio on the 5th, he was also a pianist who became devoted to the instrument at age 14, and he learned to play by ear. His first professional role was a small part in a television series, Philco Television Playhouse. Translating Mars at 3 Leos squared the ruler of his 5th and 11th houses, and trine Chiron at 4 Sag, which is in his 5th house. I don't know the part he played, but you can see these aspects in the plot. The main character started out life in rags and turned his life to riches and women. His contempt for human decency or moral restraint left him ruthless and corrupt. He falls for a woman filled with so much goodness in her soul, as much as evil in his soul. He said, everything that's truly worthwhile, I think passion is involved in your approach to it, no matter what it is. One of the roles he is perhaps most remembered for was in the movie The Odd Couple. He and Walter Matthau played so well against each other. It is clear, as this quote says, that they were each feeling what the other person was trying to get at. Acting doesn't have anything to do with listening to the words. We never really listen in general conversation to what the other person is saying. We listen to what they mean. And what they mean is often quite apart from the words. When you see a scene between two actors that really goes well, you can be sure they're not listening to each other. They're feeling what the other person is trying to get at. Know what I mean? And there was another Martian fifth house male who had no trouble playing a role pretending to be a woman. Classic movie, Some Like It Hot. He and his co-star were pretending to be women during most of the movie. It's for the plot. Jerry portrayed Daphne. That was the name of the girl that he was. In the movie, he played a woman so well, he attracted a rich man, Osgood, who wanted to marry him. The conversation was at the end of the movie where Jerry finally tells the suitor the truth. And I think this is hilarious. Basically, Jerry is talking to Osgood. Jerry, oh, no, you don't, Osgood. I'm going to level with you. We can't get married at all. Osgood, why not? Jerry, well, in the first place, I'm not a natural blonde. Osgood, doesn't matter. Jerry, I smoke. I smoke all the time. Osgood, I don't care. Jerry, well, I have a terrible past. For 3 years now, I've been living with a saxophone player. Osgood, I forgive you. Jerry, I can never have children. Osgood, we can adopt some. Jerry, but you don't understand. Osgood, oh. Jerry finally gives up and pulls off his wig. And in his normal voice, he says, I'm a man. Osgood shrugs. Well, nobody's perfect. And that's the last line of the movie. One more sign that Jack has fixed Scorpio on his fifth, occupied by resistance to change, Saturn, were these words. He answered a question from a reporter if he'd ever retire. He said, I won't quit until I get run over by a truck, a producer, or a critic. Okay. One more quick here. I don't have this person's birth time, William Macy, but I'm just going to breeze through him because of the time factor. This is his solar chart, and you can see in his solar chart that he's got a strong 5th, 11th dynamic. He's got Pluto in the 5th, Moon and Venus in the 11th. And you've probably seen him many times. He's been in over 90 movies, close to 60 television shows. This picture is how he looked in Shameless, a series that lasted 10 years where he played Frank Gallagher. He has Pluto in the 5th in wide opposition to Venus in the 11th. It's a very intense aspect because this is a solar chart. I don't know the degree of his moon, so we won't count at that. But we can say that the moon rules his solar 5th and Saturn rules his solar 11th. And he doesn't talk about his childhood. You never read an interview about childhood, and it's probably because of that 5th house Pluto. But he did say in one interview, nobody became an actor because he had a good child. And this other quote from him also defines the dynamic between the two houses. Every scene has two people who want two different things. So there's a conflict. You've got to duke it out, and you've got to get the other person to change his or her mind and do it your way. Okay. I just read these real quick. I think all actors share is somewhere down in your solar plexus, there's this fear that you're not going to be able to come up with the goods, that this is the one movie where you're going to look like a fool and they should have cast someone else and you feel ugly and you got 3 chins and you've gained too much weight and you're losing your hair and there's so many better actors who could do this. But if you've got the chops, you realize that everybody feels that way. So you just show up and do the job. And if he is born anytime up until 8:52 at night, he's got moon in Capricorn. So I do think he has moon in Capricorn. One of the traits I observe with people with that moon sign is that they almost always seem to be judging themselves on their behavior, like being self-consciousness is a habitual behavior. So in this next quote, I really love hanging out on the set and I love the life and all of that, but I don't think I could stick with this profession if it weren't for those 15 minutes a day when I get to act. That's the part I love. For some strange reason, it's the time I'm the least self-conscious in my whole life. So from his chart, you can see he's very, very self-conscious with that strong Saturn and moon in Capricorn. And here he talks about the connection between the actor and the audience. He says, many times I like to read the script before I even know who they want me to play, so I can read it. And I really enjoy it as an audience member. I think that's given me the ability to ferret out the really special scripts, all from the rest. Okay. Now, I told you at the beginning of the talk that I was in the play. Some of you may wonder about my 5th and 11th house. As you can see from this chart, I have nothing in those houses. And the ruler of those 2 houses, Moon and Saturn, don't appear to have any aspect between them. But if you do the math, you'll see that my Moon and my Saturn are 71 degrees, 18 minutes apart, which is a quintile aspect. And almost every book you read about the quintile aspect talks about it as being an aspect of creativity, artistry. So when I found a way to tap that, I was tapping the quintile, which connects the rulers of my 5th and my 11th house. Ever since I was a child, I always had a dream that just once I would see myself on the big screen. I didn't have any desire to be an actor. I just wanted to one day be in the audience, and when I looked up, see myself on the screen. Never really thought I'd do anything about it, but it was like a pipe dream, you know. Then one day while I was living in Atlanta, Georgia, I read in a newspaper that a movie was being shot near me and they were looking for extras. I found the location and went to sign up. It turns out they needed a whole lot of extras for the outdoor scene. They were going to be filming it in 2 days, so I signed up. And I went there early in the morning of the first day of shooting, which is what this outer chart is for. It was a long day, and I mean long. A lot of just waiting around chatting with other extras. In the end, I got to be in 2 shoots, and one of them was later cut, so it didn't get in the movie. But the other one was used, and I'm there for about a half a second. Blink and you'll miss me. The outer wheel is for the start of the shooting, and you can see my 11th house has a lot going on. Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, Juno, North Node. Mars and Jupiter sextile the moon, ruler of my 5th, and Mercury is trine the ruler of my 11th. So this is the movie. It was based on a true story about this crotchety old man in the 1930s who lived alone in the hills. And one day he decided to arrange to have his funeral while he was alive to see if anybody would show up. And it turned into a big circus. The newspapers got the wind of it, and people started coming from all the neighboring states just to see this event, a funeral for somebody who's still alive. One of my fondest memories of that time is getting to meet Bill Murray and Robert Duvall. And Robert even shook my hand, chatted with me briefly, even said he liked my bow tie. When the movie came out in theaters, I finally got my chance to sit in the audience and see me up on the screen. And I started thinking, I'd like to do that again someday. And this is me in that very brief scene here. That was it. Show it to you again. There I am. I was still dyeing my hair back in those days. So how I got into acting, I moved to Western Australia and in 2011, and in 2023, I moved to the town I'm living in now called Manjimup. A lovely small town surrounded on all sides by forest, or as we say in Australia, bush. I was I just moved there and was walking around town exploring it, and I saw a building with the name Manjimup Repertory Club across the front. I knew that had to do with acting. On impulse, I looked up their contact info, and when I got to my apartment, and called to see if I could come check the place out. I thought maybe I could help out in some way, connect to the stage and stuff. But when I did go there, they said they were casting for a short group of comedies, short number of comedy plays, and they'd like to know what I'd like to audition. So, sure, I did, and later they contacted me and they said they'd like me to be in 2 plays. To make a long story short, I spent the next couple months practicing lines. In one play, I played the angel Gabriel in the 21st century heaven. I helped St. Peter by making sure the computer worked properly when somebody was at the admissions desk in heaven. So I was like a Gabriel, who was also the IT guy. And in the other part, I played a police detective called to the scene of a woman addicted to drinking tea who shot someone who tried to keep her from getting the beverage. And I mean tea, real tea, not a pseudonym for something else. It was very funny. We had 3 performances, and I absolutely loved both being in front of the audience and the connection with my fellow actors. On opening night, my first time as an actor in front of a live audience, there was a transiting sun opposition Pluto aspect from my 5th to my 11th. There was a Moon-Mars Palace conjunction in Virgo, opposition Saturn in Pisces, all square the moon, ruler of my 5th, and Neptune, which had just recently passed an opposition to the ruler of my 11th, was now retrograde and back opposing it again. Mercury was almost exactly on my natal Pluto, by the way. And if you take a look at this picture closely, top left, you can see me wearing a halo for the Gabriel part. Since then, I've appeared in plays 3 other times, the most recent as old Mr. Lawrence in Little Women, the one I mentioned in the beginning. I haven't done charts for the other opening nights. I thought this was the significant one. But I recently checked my relocated chart for Australia. Remember, I had nothing in my 5th or 11th house in my birth chart. But here, in my relocated chart, my Venus-Pluto conjunction in Leo is in my 11th house, with Venus ruling my relocated ascendant. And that opening night Mercury was almost exactly conjunct that Pluto. My friend Al used to say, the longer you live in a new location, the more you grow into your relocational chart. Well, I guess I grew into that 11th house. Okay, so that's the end of it. And I put some links up here. You can find me online. I have a website called Chiron and Friends. It's www.zanestein.com/Chiron_A.htm. If you forget the _A, it'll take you to a previous page, which will lead to this one. So it's okay. I have a consultation page called Centaurian Astrology. So that's zanestein.com/centaurianastrology.htm. And if you want to contact me, I'm a Gemini. I have multiple email addresses, but this one is easy to remember. Zane Stein at zanestein.com. Also, my partner Lynette and I. Now, Lynette and I used to be married. I moved to Australia to marry her, but and later we got divorced. But we're best friends, and we live in the same town. And we are our partner on something called the Astrology Collective. It's an online astrology community, and this is the address for the Astrology Collective. You might want to check out our website, www.astrologycollective.org, and you can visit the Astrology Collective and become a member. It's like $10 a month or $100 a year. That's Australian dollars. And there's a link there. So if anybody is interested and you don't want to go through watching the video, just email me, Zane Stein at zanestein.com, and I'll be happy to send you these links. And that is the end of the PowerPoint. And so it's late. So anybody have any comments, questions, or anything? I'll be happy to answer them.
I loved every bit of this. There, hold on. Fantastic presentation. And I'm so interested in the arts. I've taken playwriting workshops. And so this was just like made for me. I don't know about the rest of the group, but I loved it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah. So what's your 11th house like?
Mars in Taurus, 28 degrees.
In which house?
The 11th house.
Do
And
you
the
have anything in
fifth, and the fifth, I have Mars in Scorpio at 15 degrees. Fifth house. No, the moon. The moon. Scorpio moon. It's a curse.
Yeah. So basically, you have an awful lot of very, very powerful, deep emotions behind that creativity of yours. You can bring up volumes from that. The moon in Scorpio is a great storehouse of very powerful, deep emotions that, and having the fifth house, that might help you to release some of them through your creativity, through that Mars in the 11th house for the audience.
I hope so. I'm looking to publish a memoir, so thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you. Any other comments, questions?
Saying in the name of MCR, we thank you very much. I think it was very interesting, all the new perspective that you gave us about the 5th and 11th house. Everybody was very interested on the talks. So thank you very much, Zane, and thank you everybody to be here. So I remind you that NCR is offering this webinar, and it will be offered to everybody at the NCR YouTube channel for 6 months. Thank you, Zane. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all. Thank you, Monica, and thank you all for coming. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. It was